So if you go back to the U.S.-China relationship, so the U.S. in the beginning basically said, we don't have to worry about China. It's about the country, and it's a communist country, and therefore it's never going to be a serious competitor for us. Then we went through what I would call the wake-up period. And the wake-up period occurred when people said, well, you know, they're getting pretty good at infrastructure. And then you looked at Huawei, which was the global leader in 5G, and everyone said, well, how did that happen? How did they get our technology? Well, they didn't get it. They actually created it, and it was state of the art. So the U.S. basically, when it got to the point of this is all about advanced technology and we've been losing our IP, the response was we have to contain China. And that became the U.S. mantra. It's really been the mantra for probably the last 7 or 8 years. But the containment process, when you think about you're competing against a country that has 6 times as many STEM students as you do, you're not going to be able to contain China. So we're kind of at that point where containment is being seen increasingly as this is not going to be successful. So where does that leave us going forward? So just think about uncertainty. There's no uncertainty. China is going to keep working the territory the same way it has, and they're going to do it in a consistent way, and they're going to deliver results that enable people to increase their overall standard of living. Nobody knows where all of the change that's going on concurrently in the U.S. is going to lead. So I think the most critical telling point in the U.S. is going to be what happens with the midterm elections. So Trump has basically made a big bet that inflation is going to come down and that tariffs are going to enable the U.S. to rebuild its manufacturing capability. Most people who are in that business would say it's not going to happen. The margin of victory, even though the Republicans call it a mandate, was 1.5 percentage points, which was one of the lowest margins of victory in recent elections. So all we're talking about is a swing of maybe 5 points in voters, and it will switch from Republican to Democrat. And if the Republicans lose control of Congress, then the Republicans are in a lame duck situation for the final 2 years because they won't be able to pass legislation. So the midterms, I think, are going to have an enormous impact on how people feel about where we've been and the future, and the political direction that we want to go in. And you know, my hope is that the U.S. will conclude that containing China is not practical. The evidence is pretty clear, and therefore, if you start out with that, then there are a lot of global issues where the Chinese interest is very aligned with the American interest. And there should be a lot of opportunities on global, on climate, on global health and pandemics and the creation of vaccines, how to deal with refugee issues, how do you deal with perennially poor countries that don't have the resources to be able to create a reasonable standard of living. So there's a lot that could be done in a very positive way, but that would also require the U.S. to accept the fact that if you go back to the art of war and Chinese very peaceful history over a very long period of time, that China is not a military threat to the U.S. And if you go back to the fact that China is a civilization state, China does not want to bring in a lot of other nationalities into that model and basically compromise the unity that exists today. So that's really what I wanted to cover. It's a kind of a fascinating time that we're living in, but I'd like to leave you with the idea that 95% of the uncertainty lies in what happens in the U.S. The China model is clear, their history of performance is clear, the commitment of people to the priorities that have been set is pretty clear. So China's going to keep on doing exactly what it's been doing and getting a little bit better every year and producing pretty good results.